Bernice looked at the boxes scattered around the room. Each one was carefully labeled. The largest read donations, and it was filled with books that once belonged to Joseph. Her wrinkled fingers delicately brushed the covers, as if they could still feel her husband's presence in those time-worn pages. "It's been 2 years," she murmured to herself, feeling the weight of that phrase. 2 years since Joseph had departed, leaving behind a void no object could fill. The clock on the wall seemed louder now, marking seconds in a house where silence had become the most frequent resident. At 65 years old, Bernice still woke up expecting to hear the gentle humming that had once accompanied Joseph as he prepared coffee in the mornings. There were still moments when she turned to tell him something, only to find the empty space beside her. Joseph had left at the age of 67, and to her, it felt like the world had lost its colors. They had built a life together, working hard, selling flowers at a small stall in the local market. It wasn't a life of luxuries, but it was theirs, full of fragrances, colors, and smiles exchanged over bouquets of roses. That morning, she began donating. Determined not to delay any longer, she started with the clothes. Shirts that still held his scent. Shoes worn over time. The hat he used to wear at the market. Each piece carried a story, a moment that now lived only in her memory. She would never forget her beloved husband, a happy and content man, even in old age, dreamy and loving. The books were the hardest part. Joseph loved to read. Over 40 years of marriage, he had cultivated a small library, even when money was tight. "A book is a place we can go when we need to stay at home," he used to tell their daughters, with a smile that lit up the small apartment where they raised their family. It was when Bernice picked up the worn-out copy that her heart tightened in a different way. This was not just another book. It was a relic from Joseph's youth, a gift from his late mother when he was only 16. How many times had she seen him read those pages to the girls before bedtime? His calm voice teaching his daughters, still so little, to dream big. Not this one, she decided, setting it apart from the others. It would be the only one she would keep. An anchor for the memories she refused to let go. When she placed it on the side table, something slipped out from between the yellowed pages, 2 pieces of paper that floated to the floor like leaves in autumn. Surprised, Bernice carefully bent down, her knees protesting, and picked up what she recognized as old plane tickets. Her eyes narrowed behind her glasses as she examined them. The date read June 15, 1980, almost 4 decades ago. The destination, Florence, Italy. One ticket was in the name of Joseph Miller. The other, Alelna Miller. She read the name aloud, confused. Alelna. The name sounded familiar in her tired mind until the memory finally came clear. Alelna was Joseph's younger sister. How could she forget? Bernice remembered the occasional phone calls, the laughter they shared during holidays. But a trip to Florence? Joseph had never mentioned it. Bernice walked slowly to the small framed reproduction on the living room wall, a painting of the flower fields of Tuscany. How many times had she caught Joseph standing there, looking at that image with a distant smile? "It's like being closer to heaven," he would say, never elaborating further. Her fingers trembled as she dialed Alelna's number. They had never been very close. And after Joseph's death, their conversations had become even more infrequent, not from lack of affection, but from the shared weight of absence. "Bernice. What a nice surprise," Alelna's warm voice answered. The sound of her sister-in-law's voice brought comfort, even after so much time. Bernice felt tears forming as she explained about the donation of the books, and what she had found. "I found something today," she said bluntly. 2 tickets to Florence in Joseph's book. One had your name on it. The silence that followed was so dense, Bernice could almost feel it. When Alelna finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of unearthed memories. "Oh my. He still kept those tickets." Her voice faltered. "Oh Bernice. He kept that for all these years. Did you know about them?" A long silence followed, broken only by the soft sound of a sigh. "Yes," Alelna finally replied. "It was our dream in our youth, or rather, our mother Aurora's dream. She always talked about the sunflower fields of Tuscany, the art galleries, the architecture. It was the place she most wanted to visit before she died." Bernice listened intently as Alelna recounted a story Joseph had never shared. After their parents' death, he had taken on the responsibility of caring for his younger sister. At only 20 years old, he worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over their heads. Joseph saved up for 3 years to buy those tickets, Alelna continued, her voice choked with emotion. It was meant to be a tribute to our mother. We were going to visit all the places she dreamed of seeing. But you never went, Bernice stated, feeling a tightness in her chest. No. 2 weeks before the trip, I got a severe case of pneumonia. I was hospitalized for almost a month. Joseph had to request a refund for the tickets to pay for the hospital. She paused. After that, well, life happened. He met you, you got married, the girls came along, and the dream was postponed. Postponed, Bernice echoed, looking again at the tickets in her hands. They weren't just pieces of paper. They were interrupted dreams. Promises postponed by necessity and duty. Over the years, amidst the daily struggle to maintain the small flower shop, raise their daughters, and care for each other, that desire had been silently kept between the pages of a book that spoke of freedom. The two cried on the phone, united by the memory of a loving man, present, an attentive husband, a dedicated father, a loyal brother. They shared the pain of knowing he never had the time to fully live everything he deserved. He never mentioned it, Bernice whispered. Not once in 40 years. Joseph always put others first, Alelna replied. Maybe he thought it was a selfish wish, especially when you were struggling so hard to build your life together. When she hung up, Bernice remained seated at the table, the tickets in front of her like ghosts of a life not lived. She opened the computer browser and typed, Florence, Italy. Images of magnificent churches, bridges over tranquil waters, charming squares, and above all, endless fields of sunflowers filled the screen. Oh, Joseph, she whispered, touching the screen. You would have loved all this. That night, when she called her daughters via video call to tell them what she had discovered, Bernice couldn't hold back the tears. He carried this dream for decades, she told her daughters, who watched her with equally tearful eyes. And he never said anything. Dad was always like that, commented Meline, the eldest. Everything that was meant for him was not a priority. Maybe we can go together one day, Mom, suggested Sophie, to honor him. Bernice smiled sadly. That would be wonderful, dears, but I know you have your lives, your responsibilities, your bills, your children. It's not easy. They both agreed. They were not in a good moment. In the following days, Bernice couldn't stop thinking about the tickets and Joseph's unrealized dream. While watering the flowers on the small porch, violets, daisies, and miniature sunflowers Joseph had loved so much, a thought began to take shape. One morning, she made a decision. She called Alelna. I want to go to Florence, she said without preamble. With you. I want to complete what Joseph couldn't do. The silence on the other end was followed by a shaky sigh. Bernice, are you sure? Absolutely. Joseph held on to this dream for 40 years, Alelna. I don't want it to remain just a yellowed piece of paper in a book. 2 weeks later, they were in a travel agency, booking a package to Tuscany. They opted for a guided tour. 2 women who had never left the country needed some assurance. Bernice's daughters were thrilled with the decision, though they couldn't accompany them due to work and family commitments. Next time, we'll go with you, Mom, promised Sophie. The night before departure, while packing her suitcase, Bernice took the book Joseph had loved so much, a photo of the 2 of them, and wrapped them in a cloth, placing them inside the suitcase. The plane trip was the first international experience for both of them. Alelna, 5 years younger than Bernice, proved to be surprisingly adventurous, enthusiastically flipping through the in-flight magazine and trying every item on the menu. Florence greeted them with the golden light of late afternoon, bathing the Renaissance buildings and turning the Arno River into a ribbon of liquid gold. The taxi that took them from the airport to the small hotel in the historic center passed through streets that seemed like something out of a dream, narrow, full of history, with flower pots hanging from the windows. He would love this, whispered Alelna, holding Bernice's hand as they looked out the window. Bernice just squeezed her hand in response, unable to speak through the tears. The 5 days they spent in the city were a journey through memories Joseph never got to create. They visited galleries where they spent hours admiring beautiful works of art. They walked across a bridge at sunset. But it was on the 4th day, when they visited the sunflower fields on the outskirts of the city, that Bernice felt something change inside her. Stretching to the horizon, thousands of flowers turned their golden faces to the sun, creating an ocean of light that seemed to pulse with its own life. "It's here," she said to Elena, her voice barely above a whisper. The two walked slowly among the rows of sunflowers, the scent of warm earth and blossoms filling the air. Bernice took the book out of her bag and held it firmly against her chest. At a spot where the sun bathed the field in golden light, she stopped. She opened a small notebook and wrote a message. "My dear Joseph, I am here, for you, for your mother, for us. For all the dreams you kept in silence so that we could have what we needed. The sunflowers are exactly as you imagined, strong, vibrant, always seeking the light, like you. There are no words to describe the beauty of this place, but I know that somehow you are seeing it through my eyes. I love you, today and always." Carefully, she tore out the page and folded it, placing it inside the book along with the photo of the two of them. Then, with Elena's help, she dug a small hole in the ground between two sunflowers and laid the book to rest. "So that a part of him can finally rest here," she explained as they covered it with soil. Elena, in silence, entwined her arm with Bernice's. No words were necessary between the two women who had so loved the man who had guarded their dreams so others could live theirs. On the way back to the hotel, Bernice looked out the bus window, observing the Tuscan landscape passing by. She felt strangely light. It wasn't happiness. The pain of Joseph's absence was still there, but it was a feeling of peace, as if she had completed something important. It was time saying that, even after so much pain, there is still room to bloom. Upon returning home, her daughters welcomed her at the airport with warm hugs and eager questions about the trip. Bernice showed them the hundreds of photos she had taken and narrated every detail of the churches, museums, and squares she had visited. She spoke about the flavors of Italian food, the red wine she tasted, the kind people she met. "So, did you enjoy it?" Meline asked while driving from the airport to home. Bernice looked out the window, observing the familiar streets of her city. She thought about the book buried under the sunflowers of Tuscany, the message for Joseph, the unused tickets now framed in her living room. It was more than just liking, she finally responded. It was like completing a cycle. When they arrived home, Bernice asked her daughters to sit with her on the porch. The violets that Joseph had planted still bloomed, resilient, like his memory. "I promised myself something while I was there," Bernice said, looking at her two daughters, who resembled their father so much. "I promised that I would no longer let any dream remain dormant." Sophie smiled, holding her mother's hand. "What do you have in mind?" Bernice smiled, her eyes shining with renewed energy. "Next time, we will go together. There is a field of sunflowers I want to show you." As the three conversed under the gentle evening light, Bernice felt a breeze caress her face, bringing with it the scent of garden flowers. For a moment, she could swear she felt Joseph's presence, not as something painful, but as a warm memory. Joseph would remain forever in their hearts. And one thing they would always remember, some dreams, after all, never come too late to be realized.